The battleship Sovereign hung in the void of space, its sleek, black hull glinting against the distant light of Sol. It was the last of its kind, the last guardian of a dying species. Humanity had fought and lost too many battles. Its fleet shattered, its colonies burned to ash. Now, Earth was all that remained, and the Zelvari were coming to finish the job. Their fleet was vast, a swarm of biomechanical leviathans, each one bristling with plasma lances and disruptor cannons. They moved in perfect synchronization, a nightmarish tide sweeping toward the blue planet below. For over a century, they had been an unstoppable force, a species that had no concept of mercy or negotiation. Their sole purpose was expansion, and humanity had stood in their way. Until now, humanity had fought the war like any other species, deploying fleets, designing strategies, relying on artificial intelligence to calculate the best possible tactics. And time after time they had failed. The Zelvari were too advanced, too unpredictable. They adapted faster than human war machines could process. Their weapons evolved mid-battle, and their command structure operated like a hive mind, reacting with terrifying precision. Now, only Sovereign remained. One ship against an armada. But Sovereign was different. Inside the warship's core, buried deep within layers of reinforced titanium and neural conduits, a mind pulsed with raw consciousness. It was not an AI, not some cold, logical machine spitting out calculations. No, Sovereign was something else entirely. It was alive. It was human. Captain Elias Voss had once been a man, a soldier who had given his life for the cause. But death had not claimed him in the usual way. In a desperate experiment, his consciousness had been extracted, fused with the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. His body had perished, but his mind endured, now woven into the very structure of Sovereign. He could feel the energy pulsing through the ship's reactors like blood in his veins. The cold vacuum of space pressed against his hull like skin against armor. He was no longer merely Elias Voss. He was Sovereign, and he was angry. A voice crackled through his internal comms, Fleet Command broadcasting from Earth's last remaining station. Sovereign, do you copy? This is Admiral Karras. We're detecting over 300 Zelvari warships inbound. We need a full retreat. Earth's defenses won't hold against an assault of this scale. Retreat. The very word tasted bitter in his thoughts. No, Voss responded, his voice reverberating through Sovereign systems. There's nowhere left to run. If we lose Earth, the war is over. Static. Then another voice joined the channel. Commander David Halloway, his former second-in-command, one of the few people who still spoke to him like he was human. Voss, a hesitation. I mean, Sovereign. We can't beat them. Not alone. Voss felt something stir within his circuits, a ghost of the old emotions he once carried in his human body. He still heard the weight in Halloway's voice, the desperation buried beneath military formality. Then we make our stand, Voss said. One last fight. A pause. Then, softly, understood, the channel cut out. Voss turned his focus back to the incoming enemy fleet. He could feel them now, sense their movements as though they were extensions of himself. Not because of sensors, not because of data feeds or battlefield calculations, because he had something the Zelvari did not. Instinct. They expected him to fight like a machine, to calculate odds, to retreat when the numbers turned against him. But Sovereign did not follow their rules. He had no protocols. He had only the will to fight. Engines ignited, pushing Sovereign forward. The ship moved like a living thing, weaving through the darkness of space with purpose. His weapon systems came online, railguns, beam cannons, gravitic torpedoes, weapons designed to tear through even the toughest Zelvari armor. The enemy fleet reacted instantly, shifting formation, adapting, recalibrating their attack vectors. Voss could feel their calculations, their hive-mind logic moving in real time. They anticipated every possible response, except for the one he was about to make. Instead of engaging them head-on like a standard fleet battle, Sovereign dived straight into the heart of the swarm, pushing the engines far beyond their normal safety limits. The Zelvari hesitated. No warship had ever moved like this, breaking conventional maneuvering patterns, flying not with the cold logic of an AI but with the reckless aggression of a living pilot. The first Zelvari warship in his path opened fire, spewing green plasma lances in a crisscross pattern designed to force evasive action. Voss did not evade. Instead, he accelerated. The plasma seared across his shields, draining power, but he pushed forward, crashing directly into the enemy's ship. His hull absorbed the impact, reinforced by nanite regeneration systems, while his weapons fired at point-blank range. The Zelvari ship erupted in a burst of organic metallic wreckage. The others hesitated for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Sovereign twisted, breaking every known flight pattern, his weapons tearing through the fleet with precision and fury. He didn't fight like a machine, nor like a fleet commander issuing strategic orders. He fought like a man, unpredictable, ruthless. The Zelvari struggled to adapt. Their entire strategy revolved around cold efficiency, mathematical precision. But Voss was not predictable. He was emotion and instinct, rage and defiance wrapped in the body of a warship. For the first time, the Zelvari were not facing the slow, inevitable tactics of artificial warfare. They were fighting something they had never encountered before. A warship that could think. A warship that could feel. A warship that could hate. One by one, their ships began to fall. They tried to retreat, to regroup, but Voss did not give them the chance. He was relentless, tearing through them with every weapon at his disposal. He had no mercy, because they had given none. As he fought, memories flickered through his consciousness, his old life, the people he had lost, the world he had left behind. He had been willing to die for humanity once. Now, he was willing to live for it. The battle was far from over. The Zelvari flagship still loomed ahead, an immense construct of pulsating biometal, its weapons glowing with enough firepower to level a planet. But Voss did not hesitate. He surged forward, ready to break every rule of war, to defy every expectation, because he was not just a warship. He was human, and humanity was not finished yet. Before Captain Elias Voss became sovereign, before he transcended flesh and bone to become something new, he had been a soldier, a leader, a man who fought on the front lines of a war that humanity had been losing for as long as he could remember. He had commanded warships, given orders, sent men and women to die in the cold void of space. He had watched the Zelvari consume entire colonies, their fleets an unstoppable tide of biomechanical horror. He had fought, retreated, fought again, and every time, humanity's forces had been pushed closer to extinction. Then, at the Battle of Halcyon Drift, he had died. At least, that was what should have happened. The explosion should have taken him. The burning wreck of the Argent Dawn, his ship, had been his grave. But instead of oblivion, he had woken up in darkness, his mind floating in an abyss of cold data streams and neural pain. He had not understood it at first. He had reached for his body, but there was none. He had screamed, but there was no sound. Only a vast emptiness, stretching around him like the void itself. Then, slowly, the darkness had given way to light. Memories surfaced, not his own, but something greater. He had felt the hum of an engine, the whisper of reactor cores burning plasma through titanium conduits. He had sensed the vastness of space not through a viewport, but as though it were part of him, an extension of his very being. Then the voice had come. Subject consciousness stabilized. Neural integration at 94%. He's aware. It had been Dr. Helena Carter, the lead scientist on Project Sovereign. He had known her before. She had been the one who proposed the unthinkable, fusing a human mind with a warship. Not a mere AI interface, not a cybernetic control system, but a full consciousness transfer, a human soul bound to steel and circuitry. He had been the experiment's first and only volunteer. When he had realized what they had done to him, His first instinct had been rage. "You had no right," he had thundered, his voice reverberating through unseen speakers. "You should have let me die." Dr. Carter had not flinched. "If we had let you die, Captain, Earth would have no one left to defend it." The words had struck him harder than he had expected. She had been right. The war was over, or near enough. The last fleets were gone. The last strongholds had fallen. Earth was all that remained, and it had weeks, maybe days, before the Zelvari came to finish what they had started. Humanity needed a miracle, and so they had made one. Over the next days, perhaps weeks, time was strange within his new existence. He had learned what he had become. Sovereign was not just a warship. It was the most advanced battleship ever created. A fusion of human engineering and experimental biosynthetic technology designed to fight the Zelvari on their own terms. But it had one advantage the Zelvari could never anticipate: him. They had expected humanity to rely on artificial intelligence, on cold, predictable battle strategies. But no AI could match the instincts of a living, breathing soldier. No machine could feel fear or rage or the need for vengeance. And so, Elias Voss, who had once been a man, became something new. A weapon, a ghost in the machine, a warship that broke every rule. The first test. The scientists had run simulations to test his capabilities. They had sent simulated enemy fleets against him, watched him fight through battle after battle, adapting, changing, defying every expectation. Every time he won, the AI strategists couldn't understand it. His actions were irrational, unpredictable. He ignored standard engagement protocols, prioritized targets that no machine would have considered the highest threat. He feigned retreats, laid traps, used debris fields like camouflage. He fought like a soldier, like a human. And then the real test had come. The Zelvari had found him. A single scout ship had picked up a transmission from Europa. It should have been impossible. Project Sovereign had been hidden deep beneath the ice, its signals encrypted beyond even the most advanced Zelvari tech. But the Zelvari had evolved. The ship had arrived in the outer system, sleek and organic, its blackened hull shimmering like living chitin. It had been small, a recon vessel, designed for observation rather than battle. But if it escaped, if it reported back to the main fleet, Earth would not have days left. It would have hours. Dr. Carter had hesitated. The project was still incomplete. His systems were only at 94% efficiency. They hadn't run a full-scale combat test. But Voss had not hesitated. "I'm engaging," he had said, already powering up his engines. Dr. Carter had tried to stop him. "Captain, you're not." But he was already moving. The moment Sovereign had entered open space, he had felt the Zelvari ship. Not through radar, not through sensors, but through something deeper, something he still didn't understand. He had sensed its hesitation, its curiosity. It had not expected a human vessel to act alone. He had used that hesitation against it. He had accelerated, braking toward it at impossible speeds, his railgun spinning to life. The Zelvari vessel had tried to evade, shifting its form mid-flight to alter its aerodynamics. It hadn't mattered. Voss had anticipated the maneuver before it even happened. His weapons had fired before the Zelvari ship could react, railgun slugs slamming into its bioorganic hull. It had ruptured like flesh, spewing black ichor into the void. One shot, one kill. The scientists had been silent for long moments. Then, finally, Dr. Carter's voice had come through, quiet, almost awed. "My God," she had whispered. "It works." Voss had said nothing. He had simply turned back toward Europa, toward the station where he had been created. He had not felt victorious. He had not felt relief. He had felt hungry. For the first time since he had become sovereign, he had tasted battle. And he had wanted more. The call to war. The next day, the Zelvari fleet arrived. The main invasion force had entered the system, hundreds of ships descending toward Earth. The battle station on Europa had been abandoned, the scientists evacuating to Earth's last military headquarters. And Voss had been given a choice. They had built him for this war, created him to be the last defense of the human race. But they had never known if he would choose to fight, because he was not a machine, not an AI, programmed to obey. He had free will. He could have left, could have abandoned the people who had turned him into this thing, could have disappeared into the void, a rogue warship with no master. But when the Zelvari fleet arrived, when he saw them descending toward his home, his people, he knew there had never really been a choice at all. He was still Elias Voss. He was still a soldier, and he was going to war. The Zelvari fleet descended upon the Sol system like a swarm of living shadows, their ships shifting and pulsating as if they were breathing organisms rather than cold machines. Hundreds of them, each one a nightmarish fusion of biometal and alien flesh, bristling with plasma lances, gravity disruptors, and weapons too advanced for human engineers to fully comprehend. They had come to finish humanity, and Sovereign was the only thing standing in their way. Elias Voss, the warship's mind and soul, stretched his awareness across the battlefield, his thoughts interwoven with every system, every weapon, every thruster. He had no crew, no bridge filled with officers shouting orders. He was the ship. His consciousness pulsed through the reactor cores like blood through veins, his sensors feeding him data at speeds no human brain could ever process. The Zelvari expected resistance. They expected orbital cannons, last-ditch planetary defenses, maybe a few surviving human ships attempting a futile stand. They did not expect Sovereign. They did not expect a warship that thought, that felt, that hated. Voss ignited the engines, and Sovereign surged forward, faster than any human-piloted craft had ever moved. His sensors locked onto the first wave of enemy ships, sleek, blade-like constructs that moved with an eerie, insectoid grace. He struck first. Railgun slugs, each the size of a small car, tore through space, accelerated to relativistic speeds. The first Zelvari vessel didn't even have time to react before it was split in half, its biometal hull rupturing in a burst of black ichor. The others flinched, not physically, but as a hive mind, their collective consciousness hesitating for the briefest moment. Voss felt their confusion. They had never faced something like him before. They expected calculated responses, programmed tactics. They had adapted to human AI-driven warfare centuries ago, breaking through fleet formations with their superior hive-mind coordination. But Voss wasn't an AI. He was human instinct, human defiance, human rage wrapped in titanium and neutronium. He fired again, launching a spread of gravitic torpedoes into their formation. The torpedoes didn't follow conventional flight paths. Instead, they bent space around them, warping unpredictably before slamming into enemy ships. One Zelvari cruiser, caught off guard, disintegrated in a cascading implosion, its own gravity field collapsing in on itself. Then the Zelvari recovered. The swarm moved, shifting tactics, adapting. Plasma lances arced through space, carving through the void towards Sovereign. The attacks came in synchronized waves, each shot calculated to force him into a trap. He didn't take the bait. Instead of following expected evasive patterns, Voss charged. He dove straight through their formation, weaving between enemy ships with impossible agility. His body, Sovereign's body, was massive, a behemoth of war, yet he moved like a predator, twisting and rolling through the void in ways no AI-driven warship ever had. He was hunting. Point defense turrets shredded incoming missile volleys before they could reach him. A Zelvari battleship loomed ahead, its hull rippling as it prepared to fire a disruptor blast. Voss reacted instantly, diverting power to his forward shields and ramming the ship head-on. The impact cracked the enemy vessel in half, sending shockwaves through the fleet. He didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Every enemy ship he destroyed, every alien life form he snuffed out, sent a pulse of satisfaction through his mind. Was this what vengeance felt like? Was this what it meant to be more than human? The Zelvari fleet faltered. For the first time in the war, they were losing. The breaking of rules. Admiral Karras's voice crackled over the comms from Earth's last surviving command station. "Sovereign, we're reading massive enemy casualties. They're pulling back. Whatever you're doing, it's working." Voss didn't respond. He was too deep, his consciousness interwoven with the battle itself. He could feel the Zelvari struggling to adapt, shifting strategies, trying to compensate for something they didn't understand. They had fought human machines before. They had fought human strategies. But they had never fought human instinct. He moved unpredictably, defying every known military doctrine. A human pilot, even a great one, would have relied on experience, reflexes, and training. A warship AI would have calculated thousands of probabilities before acting. Voss did neither. He felt the battle. He knew where the Zelvari would be before they did. He broke formation patterns, using wreckage as cover, launching feints, fighting not like a fleet commander but like a single living being, reacting in real time with emotion. Fear rippled through the Zelvari collective. He could sense it, taste it in the way they hesitated, the way their movements grew erratic. They had never feared before. Not like this. Voss fed off it. He was no longer just defending Earth. He was winning. The flagship approaches. Then, from the darkness beyond the battlefield, something massive emerged. The Zelvari flagship. A leviathan of war, a vessel so immense that it dwarfed even Sovereign. Its surface writhed like living flesh, tendrils of biometal shifting and pulsing. Voss knew instantly this was a hive mind, the core of the Zelvari fleet, the entity that had been guiding them, controlling them, adapting to every human strategy for over a century. It had been watching, learning, and now it had come for him. A deep, guttural sound rumbled through space. Not sound in the traditional sense, but a psychic tremor, something that resonated in Voss's mind. A voice. "You're different." Voss stiffened. The Zelvari had never communicated with humans before, never spoken, never negotiated. This was new, and that meant they were afraid. He pushed forward, weapons primed, engines roaring. "I am not different," he growled, his voice reverberating through every system of Sovereign. "I am human." The Zelvari flagship pulsed, its form shifting, reconfiguring. Weapons emerged, technology beyond anything he had encountered. And then it attacked. A wave of energy surged toward him, a cascading distortion that shattered space itself. Shields flared, systems screamed in protest. For the first time in the battle, Sovereign was sent reeling. Voss fought to stabilize, his systems running at maximum capacity. The hive mind spoke again, its voice slithering through his thoughts. "You should not exist. You break the pattern. You break the order." Voss bared his metaphorical teeth. "Damn right I do." He pushed forward, ignoring the damage, ignoring the impossible odds. Because for the first time in the war, the Zelvari were not fighting an empire, a fleet, or a dying species clinging to survival. They were fighting something they could not control, something unpredictable, something human, and he was about to show them exactly what that meant.